And the future is brilliant. It's a wonderful future. It's almost like, Arthur C. Clarke wrote a science fiction book long time ago called Childhood's End. It's almost as optimistic as that book.
Amit Goswami demonstrates that humanity's prospect for a bright future is rising as we move out of the era of the materialist/rationalist mind to the era of the spiritual intuitive mind.
You don't have to give up anything. It's given up for you as you progress. Automatically, some things drop off. Something just drop out of your being, and you become the radiant being that you're capable of becoming as you grow your software. Right now, we hold on to just a very minimal software that makes us human being. Why be satisfied with minimal when we have so much?
You've had decades of experience as a quantum physicist before you retired and stepped out of that particular kind of niche, if you like, if you want to use that word. You're still incredibly active, quantum activism and all of that stuff. For anybody that hasn't yet connected with you, doesn't know quite who you are, could you just summarize really briefly, as possibly as you can, who you are, what your career has involved with, and where your goals are even now at this stage?
Well, I have to talk about the goals because, when you are as old as I am, it is difficult to make any finite goal anymore. You take it more or less as it comes. However, within that, I certainly would like to see some changes that I keep on hoping that the world will respond. And I must say that it has been, I established quantum activism movement in 2009. And it has been 15 years, and there have been lots and lots of improvement in the society. There also has been tendencies on which, we, the 15%, as I usually take an estimate by David Hawkins, we have nothing to do with that part, unfortunately. We are not big enough to make any impact in voting in countries or political situations. And so things are happening beyond our control, which suggests that we are in some trouble. But I keep optimistic because among the 15% or so who are awakened to the extent of reading such books or listening to such shows as yours, they are increasing in number, getting more serious. Since establishing the quantum activism movement, we have started a higher education, transformative education, giving masters and PhD. And we are running for 5 years and we are doing okay. So that shows that there is a lot of interest, serious interest in learning the new worldview, the new science, how to get things done in a more spiritual way. So things are good. So as far as goal is concerned, my goal is to take it further as far as I can. My life is now almost totally dedicated to this adventure of consciousness.
Wonderful. The adventure of consciousness. There's two things. One of the things is that I guess it reflects what you were saying about as you are consciously getting towards shifting into a different state of consciousness and awareness when you leave this particular body that you're in. This book, out of all the ones that I've read of yours, and I've read several, seems to have the most, you used the word serious. You said people are getting serious about the quantum process of living. This one is both, the message is very serious and the way you've written it is very serious, but also it contains some of your humor in there as well. But the serious nature comes across, and your strong desire to see change and your drive to wish to see that change, I suppose. Did you feel when you were writing it that there was a certain urgency to the need to have it?
The book certainly reflects a serious bent. The integration of Lamarckism and Darwinism is very important. Biologists today don't pay any attention at all to evolution theory. They just want people to believe that it's all solved. Darwin's theory with New Darwinism, maybe slight changes of New Darwinism solves everything. But this is not true. The data on the fossil gaps never has been solved. The theoretical proposals that have been given are so unscientific, what can I say? And there are major problems. We shouldn't go into too much of finer details. But this book presents some of the finer details, hoping that some of the readers will like to see that really Darwinism and Lamarckism can be integrated together. And together they make a much, much better theory. It's still a theory. I don't claim to have every answer of biological evolution, but still, it is a much, much better theory than neo-Darwinism. And this is very important. But that's only half of the book. The other half of the book is a message that should be understandable and reachable, and hope many people will find it inspirational, which is that the worst message that Darwinism gives us is that we have no future. Humanity has no future. There is no future that we can speak of. And indeed, the Earth can very well be a planet of the apes in the future. Darwinism could not care less. But that is just not the case. In the new theory that we have built, as soon as you put in Lamarckism, purpose is in. And when purpose and cause both are taken into account in a theory of evolution, the future can be predicted. And the future is brilliant. It's a wonderful future. It's almost like, Arthur C. Clarke wrote a science fiction book a long time ago called Childhood's End. It's almost as optimistic as that book. It is really something to find that there is an optimistic outlook that we can take in view of the fact that many people, very serious thinkers, today are scared of the artificial intelligence progress that we are making. They think that artificial intelligence will take over.
And actually, you say on several occasions, I think in this book, that there's no way that it can take over, certainly not at the moment, because it doesn't actually find meaning. Can you clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, the simple fact is that it cannot have consciousness. A machine cannot have consciousness. And our picture people who propose that we are machines are basically saying that we don't have consciousness. We have something that is objective and something that can be made out of consciousness called conscious qualia. But even that cannot be explained really. Any subjective qualia cannot be explained with scientific materialism. So it's no question that a robot which is purely material, we are making them, cannot be conscious. This is a completely vain idea that they can be. So if they cannot be conscious, we can always pull the plug. But there is a danger. I don't underestimate the danger. The danger is that human beings will be able to use artificial intelligence much more effectively to destroy one another. That possibility is already happening. In the Ukraine war, it's amazing how either side cannot operate without the help of artificial intelligence. So naturally, artificial intelligence is now very important for warfare. My hope is that we will not use it in warfare and destroy ourselves. Instead, we'll use it for the simple fact that now it's time for us to give up rational thinking, or at least white-collar jobs that really does not need a human being to do it. They're very routine. So if those things can be delegated to these machines, then we'll have our time free and we can do some spiritual work and really grow in spirituality and make that future of humanity that is predicted come true. Because one thing has been very clear to me from the beginning: consciousness works through us. It's not a dualistic consciousness that works from up above and all you have to do is to pray to it and it will answer favorably. It's not like that. Yes, it does answer favorably. There is a concept to that extent, but we have to respond favorably as well. It's a human being God cooperation, if you want to use the old language of God.
That's great that you've actually used the God word, because science, of course, is terrified of. Well, it can't, can it? I mean, it can because you've just used the God word, but it's a very contentious area. It covers all sorts of potential pitfalls. I don't want to go into that just at the moment, but for people that aren't necessarily familiar with your thinking, you science is split at a very fundamental level between materialism and non-materialism, and everything that you are putting forward is based on the primacy of consciousness as the originating field. Could you, again, big question, it's a bit embarrassing to ask, can you try to outline that for people at the very basic level? I know you do that in all of your books, but if you could do that for us now.
I'll be happy to, because this is really the most important part. Once one recognizes that quantum physics itself leads to primacy of consciousness, then all one's doubts go away. And it is really very simple. It starts with the very fact that quantum objects are both waves and particles. This is, of course, a very unsophisticated way of putting it. They're not really both waves and particles. When you take a look at the mathematical equation of quantum physics, it's very clear. Unequivocally, quantum objects are waves. No doubt about it. They are waves, period. When we measure them, however, they do become particles. So these objects do not do their waving in space and time. Right? In space and time, we never see them. We see only particles. So where do they reside? Once you answer this question, that they must reside outside of space and time in a domain of potentiality, then you have it from then on. It's just identifying the domain of potentiality with consciousness itself, because if there is choice from that domain out of the possible outcomes to one single outcome. And therefore, what chooses? Consciousness does. So it's very easy to identify the domain of potentiality as consciousness itself. Additionally, there is non-locality, that concept that Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen introduced in physics in 1935 and verified by Alan Aspect in 1982. So it is very, very clear from these considerations, non-locality is signal-less communication. Non-local communication cannot take place in space and time. It must involve another domain of reality. And that domain we have right before our eyes, domain of potentiality. So domain of potentiality is the domain of potential non-locality, non-local connection. And that potential non-local connection between things is what we call consciousness.
Ah, right. So the conscious aspect is outside of space and time. That is us, that consciousness. But what we often refer to as our consciousness, in other words, our awareness, our thinking, our feeling, qualia, in a way, it's not consciousness in that sense, is it?
Oh, it is. I mean, you don't really have to be that much confused. But as I said, I was a little bit too hasty. I should have added at least one more thing, which is that consciousness, the ground of being, is unconscious in us. That's what we call unconscious. Psychologists have been calling them unconscious ever since Freud used that concept. So yes, it is very important to realize that consciousness can be there without awareness, and consciousness can also be there with awareness. We are beings with awareness. We are consciousness with awareness, and the consciousness of the domain of potentiality is consciousness without awareness, unconscious.
In your book, The Ascent of Humanity, I'm just going to kind of sidetrack and we'll come back around to this. The book is The Ascent of Humanity, Quantum Biology and Our Future. And on the back of it, you have a lovely couple of sentences. I'm just going to read them for the viewers. Amit Goswami demonstrates that humanity's prospect for a bright future is rising as we move out of the era of the materialist/rationalist mind to the era of the spiritual intuitive mind. And you finish that, the blurb on the back by saying, and now with the quantum physics having integrated science and spirituality, the journey of ascent begins, in which all of us are invited to play a role. So the essence of integrating or understanding, coming to a new understanding of how consciousness fits into the overall picture, is the absolute framework to adopt and to position ourselves within in order to understand with greater depth of meaning and purpose. That's really what you're saying in that section.
Yes.
Okay. And one of the aspects that really caught my eye was your brief reference, as far as I've read it so far, to Rupert Sheldrakes' work with morphic fields.
Yes.
And now that was interesting because it relates to epigenetics and the control of the individual cells. Could you just outline briefly how you found it interesting and where it sort of fits within the book, that sort of thinking?
Yeah, well, what I was looking for, the idea that I had is that the living systems have both hardware and software, and the software is not hardware. Materialists assume that the hardware makes up software. That is not true. Software has to be non-material. Quantum physics makes it very clear. Non-material things exist, has to exist. Otherwise, we cannot solve quantum paradoxes. So once you recognize that there is non-material software, then what is the nature of it? This is the question that I was asking. Sheldrake, on the other hand, was asking the question of how cells are differentiated, how cells in organs are differentiated. Every organ in our body are made of cells, but each cell makes a different set of proteins than the cells of another organ. How does that happen? And Sheldrake came to the conclusion that since non-locality is involved, body works in a coordinated way. How does the toe cell know that it is in the toe, or a brain cell know that it is in the brain and act accordingly and coordinate with the movement of other cells in the body? That this non-locality suggests immediately to Sheldrake that something must be non-material that is involved. So Sheldrake proposed a sort of analogy, morphic resonance, sort of radio analogy, a little dualistic, but that can be excused. After all, he's a biologist, not a physicist. So when I looked at it, immediately it became clear how to make it non-dualistic. And consciousness in mediating the psychophysical parallelism between the morphogenetic fields and the organs makes it very clear that it is non-dualistic. Consciousness mediates the interaction between non-matter and matter. But it has to be the epigenetic aspect of the cells in the body has to be non-material. Non-material acts as a blueprint with which we make the cellular physiology, the organ physiology.
It particularly rang a bell with me because, as you know, I do dowsing, and I use dowsing as a way to help people start to open the door to all of this aspect, the non-physical aspect of life that we're talking about here. Now, and so what's interesting about what you've just said is that the aspect of the dowsing of the subtle energy in which we live, the subtle fields in which we live, the earth energy responds to our consciousness. So when we actively raise a resonance, open the heart, and with intention interact with it, there is a response from the field that we can douse. And it's not just a subjective experience. It is in the moment, but it is repeatable by dowsers. So what struck me was that Sheldrake's morphic fields and the way that you use it in the book to illustrate the point of instructing cells Earth energy, the field in which we live, that we classify as Earth energy, is not a scientific term, is very much like a morphic field. It definitely influences the people
Yeah.
that live within the space, and therefore, in many ways, it is epigenetic to us as a larger being than a cellular being. Does that kind of feel like the sort of way that you were going in analogous terms with the cells?
Yeah, what you just said is the most important aspect of it, which is that the movement of these morphic fields, morphogenetic fields, that is what we feel as vital energy.
Mm.
And so it's a shame that Rupert never made the connection to our feelings. His theory directly leads to a theory of feeling, and that is the most important aspect of these morphogenetic fields that he introduced so cleverly. Um, anyway, I'm glad that I was perceptive enough to see that it is directly connected with vital energies that we feel, like dowsing and many other phenomena. I mean, look, our emotions themselves are based on these feelings that we have. So indeed, that is the most important contribution of really Sheldrakes' theory.
When you talk about vital energy, again, just to clarify for viewers, could you use a different word for that? What do you mean by vital energy?
Well, vital energy then is the purely quantum level of energy, which is connected with being alive. Having an organ means having a hardware and a software. The software are the morphogenetic fields after conditioning. And these softwares, when they move, as they come into being and go back into the unconscious, that movement is what we feel as vital energy.
So some people might know. Sorry, Amit. Some people might know that as chi.
Yeah, something we know as Shi or Prana in India. Yeah, they are the same thing. So the concept was known 2000 years ago. We have taken a very long time to discover the meaning of the concept and how it connects to the rest of science.
But this is the exciting thing. This is the brilliant thing about quantum science, and especially about your perspective and your theories on it, and is that it absolutely does start to unite spirituality and science. And so we've had to go on this loop round the scientific and through the materialistic viewpoint to come back out the other side and see that actually it's the non-material aspect which holds the answer, don't you think?
Yeah, the material is important because everything ultimately has to be embodied in material, but non-material is what gives the juice into the material. It's like, it's like society and culture. Society is a collection of human beings, but it's the culture which is the essence of the society. So similarly, the software is the essence of what we do with the hardware. Hardware otherwise is just, a computer coming without any software. Just imagine what we do with it. Unless you're knowledgeable and put in some software, the computer is doing.
They're a student on the path. They're a seeker, right? What would you say? How would you? It's like if you were talking to a nephew, a young nephew. What would you say to a young nephew or a niece about the essence of everything that you really are trying to capture in everything? And so to really make it sort of sit with them so that yes, this is what it's about. This changes their step through the day.
Yeah, I have a very definite order in which I introduce concept. The first thing I introduce is that, okay, who are you? The subject. Many people today, because of the barrage of materialist propaganda that get on the internet and news media, do not even know that consciousness requires a subject, not just the object. So the first thing I teach to my students, nephew and niece or anyone, is that, okay, look, it's not objective. Consciousness cannot be an objective thing. It's not a thing. It has the experiencer built into it. Experiencer looks at an object, that's consciousness. It is subject, objects, two polarities of experience, that's what makes a conscious experience. So once they get that, once they begin to get that, okay, their I, the refer to in language, is really not an ornamental I, but it has real meaning, it has real causal efficacy. Then they start getting curious. Okay, so what can I do with this I? So then I talk about experiences. Okay, so what is the experience of this I? What is your experience? It is just only material sensing, or and thinking, which today we have to accept computers can do it, and therefore there is an element of thinking which is mechanical, but thinking meaning is not mechanical. So next thing I teach them is about vital energy and meaning, that these are not mechanical things, these are non-material things. And once they get that, then subsequently non-locality can be introduced, and intuition that comes to us with extrasensory perception, not sensory perception, this can be introduced. And once they get that, there is this 5 bodies of the human being, 4 experience and the self, then from then on it becomes somewhat easier. Then it's just a question of detail. But the biggest problem is to accept that consciousness is more than just an object. It is a subject-object split entity, even when we have awareness. And beyond awareness, there is the unconscious, which is the ground of all being. But that I wait to introduce that, I wait. I don't immediately introduce it. I introduce it through quantum physics.
You mentioned there the 5 bodies of the human being. What aspects would those be?
Okay, so 5 bodies are physical body, that obviously is acceptable to anybody. And then the vital body is all the software, vital software that we talked about, morphogenetic fields that are acquired by organs, the epigenetic part. So that makes up the vital body. And then we have the mental body. Mental body beyond just information. There is also thinking, meaning. That is not mechanical. That's the mental body, non-mechanical mental body. And then the extrasensory perception, what do we get? We get the archetypes. That's the intuition, experience of intuition. That's the archetypal body. And then we have finally the self itself, the experience.
So would that be equating to the higher self?
Yeah,
It,
that's
it,
the higher self, which I call quantum self.
the quantum self, right? And maybe I probably use the term soul self because it's the
Yeah, you can use this word soul, although I used it slightly with we use both quantum self and soul with slightly different connotation. But soul certainly is connected. I mean, soul has a lot of quantum self experience. In that sense, the soul and quantum self are not very different concepts.
because this is one of the things. I mean, we can only theorize and hypothesize and speculate about this aspect, but this is one of the things where I kind of get to a dead end because I think, well, soul self, right? Okay, well, the soul is eternal, but the quantum field from which everything originates in this dimension, it isn't. It is a facet of this dimension. It's a mechanism for this experience. Whereas the soul self, the consciousness is outside of time and space, but the soul, as far as I'm aware, do correct me from your point of view, is even well, I would say at a higher vibration. So the eternity of that is way. I think I'm seeing the ridiculous comment I'm about to make. It's way beyond non-space and time. That
Well,
the eternal point of
yeah, I think you were a little bit too, what should I say? I think you're idealizing it a little bit too much from quantum physics point of view. In quantum science, what we say is that there is the ego and there is the quantum self. And in between, we can have states of homeostasis. Ego-like state, but much more alive. Those are the states of the soul. Whereas what you are describing, we reserve the word spirit for that,
uh-huh.
the eternal spirit. Okay, so spirit is nothing but quantum self.
Right, got you. Okay, yeah. That's helpful. Thank you. That's great. So, I just want to come back again on something else, which was very early on in our conversation today. There are aspects of our experience of being alive which is really, I suppose, is the ESP aspect, which means that we are actually experiencing things more like a wave, even though we are a particle. I mean, I'm talking analogies here.
Hmm.
Even though we're physically based particles, we have an experience of a wave-like thing. For instance, connecting remotely to time and space as a non-local awareness. Again, as usual, I'm not sure I have a question in there, but fundamentally, there are
But I,
wave-like.
I think I can help you. Instead of using the word experiencing, if you use the word processing, we are processing in the unconscious all these things as wave.
Of course.
And this is very important. In fact, to understand that is also takes a little while, and you have clearly understood it from your own being. Yes, that is the very major thing, that we process the experiences before they happen as waves. And then when we actualize by choosing them, then only they become experiences and we get object of experience and subject of experience. That wave-like state is most important. Wave-like state exists embedded in consciousness as the ground of being. So what is reality? Reality is consciousness, and it's embedded waves of possibility within it to choose from.
I mean, I've kind of asked this question already, but anything that you would particularly want to pull out of this particular book that you would want to make very clear to viewers? I mean, I know we have actually covered a lot of the fundamentals here.
I think the readers or viewers, in our case, have a lot of misconception about evolution theory. And this misconception should be removed. So although the first half of the book is a bit serious, but still I would implore the reader to read it, or viewers to become interested in reading the book, to not to ignore that part, although it's a little more technical than the rest of the book. But the technical part is very important because the belief in Darwinism, once you have that belief staunchly established in yourself, you cannot think of future of humanity anymore. You think in terms of the competition, survival of the fittest will always be like that. There will be no change. You fall into that milieu of thinking. And that is the dangerous aspect of human being. That completely excludes spirituality. To bring back spirituality, you've got to give up that thinking. So how should we think? You have to bring up non-material, and non-material software is the way to bring it up. Matter does not make its own software. It cannot. It is a completely false claim. And as soon as you allow for non-material software and allow for consciousness as the ground of being, which has both matter, hardware, and non-material software, then it's a question of how consciousness makes further software and how we can develop further software. Our software, much of our software is in potentiality. We have not developed it yet. And so we have to work. It's not going to come for free. Those of the people who are like New Agey and think that just sitting and praying will help them to manifest something, it doesn't happen that way. We have to work, and sometimes we have to work with intelligence. And spiritual work is just that. It makes you more and more intelligent, because intelligence is something that we have to have, and we get that as we delve into spirituality. And so this is the journey. The journey is a journey of intelligence and happiness as you go along. It's not at all like the journey that is presented in spiritual textbooks. It seems like so hard, and you have to give up the world, and you have to give up your attachments. No, it's not like that at all. You don't have to give up anything. It's given up for you as you progress. Automatically, some things drop off. Something just drop out of your being, and you become the radiant being that you're capable of becoming as you grow your software. Right now, we hold on to just a very minimal software that makes us human being. Why be satisfied with minimal when we can have so much? This is my really drive, and I try to encourage my readers and whoever listens to me, that look, why compromise? Why compromise so much? Why limit yourself so much? Just see, just test it out and see what happens.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's a great message, and I suppose, I think if there's a, I don't want to lower the tone, but if there's a design fault in humanity, it's the depth of self-sabotage, the ability to self-sabotage that path of spiritual development, and a lot of that is apathy, a lot of that is fear. And a lot of it is just not understanding the importance for the individual energy field that we are in order to the need to develop, the need to move forward, to make change, to have agency. I mean, that's why we have agency, is to make use of our potential, isn't that really? Amit, wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm going to let you go, sir. It's been an absolute pleasure, as it always is. So thank you so much. And obviously, I've got your websites. I've promoted them before. We'll put those up for you. It's still amitgoswami.org.
Yeah.
That's one.
AmitGoswami.org, yes.
And sign up to the mailing. Yeah, good. Thank you very much, sir. I wish you well. You look after yourself. Speak again soon. Take care. Bye bye.